Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Melissa Ayala with Waterloo Greenway. We're excited to show you our monthly virtual tour and talk to you a little bit about the progress at Waterloo Park. As we are going through our presentation, please use the chat or Q&A feature at any time to submit your questions. We'll be seeing a presentation, and then at the end we'll be taking questions and answers. This tour is being recorded, so if you would like to share it with your friends or networks after, we'll have available on our YouTube page and at waterloogreenway.org. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Like I said, this is our Waterloo Park virtual tour. This is a monthly series, so if you'd like to share our next opportunity, keep an eye out for our next tour that will be coming up in October. We can go to our next slide. And now I would like to introduce my colleague and our presenter today, John Rigdon, our Director of Planning and Design, who will walk us through our Waterloo Park virtual tour. Thank you, John.
Great, thank you, Melissa, and thanks everyone for joining us today for this tour. So before I walk through a series of stops in Waterloo Park and show you all the latest and greatest with the construction progress, I just wanted to orient you all a little bit with the whole project and our organization. So Waterloo Greenway is a 501c3 nonprofit that's in a public-private partnership with the City of Austin. Our project is on the eastern side of downtown. You can see it here. It's about 35 acres of new and improved public open space along the southernmost reach of Waller Creek. And so in this diagram, you can see Waller Creek there, the white line, and then the open space in green. This project is the result of years of planning and design, and most recently the project we're constructing and designing now is the result of an international design competition. That process in 2012 led to the selection by City Council and the community of two lead architecture firms which are executing this vision. Michael Van Valkenburg and Associates is our lead landscape architect, and Thomas Pfeiffer and Partners is our lead architect. And I'll go through some of the features they're building in partnership with a great local team of experts as well. In total, this project is 35 acres, as I said, of new and improved public open space. And that's a big project. It's about 1.5 miles of creek that will be restored along that series of parks and open spaces. And in order to do this, we're executing the work in phases. So you can see here a rough phasing diagram of how we're going to execute that work. And the map is tilted here, so north is to your right now. And phase one is in bold there in orange, and that's Waterloo Park. Some of y'all may have attended events in Symphony Square. That was kind of our phase 0. That's the other area there in orange you see, and that's where our offices are, as well as many great events that we've hosted there with partners over the last 1.5 years or so. So Waterloo Park, welcome to a tour. We're going to walk through this approximately 11 acres between 15th and 12th Streets and Trinity and Red River Street, and show a lot of the features and construction progress in this area. So the vision, this is a rendering from earlier on in the process that shows the park at night. And I think this is a cool rendering because it situates the park in its urban context. It's in downtown. It's on the Red River Cultural District. You can see the skyline in the background. You can see the Capitol in the background as well, and then the hospital in the foreground. Also, you can see the size of the park, as well as the intent on this being a heavily programmed space with lots of activities during day and night year-round. So this shows a nighttime event, in this case a concert happening in the Moody Amphitheater within Waterloo Park. So we'll see a lot more progress photos, but just to give you an idea of the vision. At the end of last year, this is where we were. We were approximately 1 year into construction, and most of the work we'd done to that point had been underground. Lots of utilities, lots of reshaping of the land, building of support structures and infrastructure, and then the relocation of some large heritage trees. And we're just starting to build the Moody Amphitheater building, sort of coming out of the ground there. You can see the walls in the background coming out of the ground. So this is a photo just recently, just the other day, taken from roughly the same location. So you can see the tremendous change that has happened so far this year in construction. And one of the really cool things that gets me really excited about the project is we're starting to put in grass, and that really starts to make it look like a park. So you'll see more of the plantings and grass that have gone in a lot of the detailed photos, but you're really starting to see the park take shape. So let's go. We're going to move through the park on a series of stops as if we were all there in person, like we hopefully can be soon. And at each of these stops, I'll talk in detail about some of the features you're seeing and some of the interesting construction aspects. So we're going to start entering off of Red River Street. And so you can kind of follow along on the dashed line, and then roughly where we stop will be these dark green circles. And that's kind of what we do if we're there in person. So our first stop is going to be entering across the 14th Street Bridge, which is a pedestrian bridge, and into the park in the Moody Amphitheater. So this is kind of hovering in the air above that 14th Street Bridge entrance. And so when you walk in, you'll approach the amphitheater. You'll see this here and here. And our canopy structure, which provides shade and coverage, as well as sort of sets an architectural landmark that people will recognize and like to congregate around. And then you can see all of the buildings here, which will support the amphitheater. So if you're on the ground and you walk in, it'll look something more like this. You'll see the amphitheater roof and the stage, and then you'll see these curved concrete walls. So really the architecture of this building has two primary elements. This beautiful curved concrete, and then this white steel of the roof. And the concrete walls themselves will have vines growing up them once the work is complete. So there'll be that green element as well. And behind these walls is a lot of the supporting infrastructure to support events and activities in the park. So, when we were planning this park, talking with the community and talking with our partners in the Parks Department, we understood already the fact that, our community loves special events, music, activities outdoors. We've got a great climate for it and a culture that supports and puts on those types of events. But one of the things that we heard again and again was these events often have really long-term major impacts on the park spaces that they're in. So if you have to bring in tons of portable toilets or stages or food or any other types of things like that, you often have long closures as it's set up, as it's taken down, and then as the park recovers from those impacts. So one of the goals was to build as much of that in as we can to the landscape and bury it underground into the hillside or with occupiable spaces above and around it. So it doesn't feel like a massive building, but also it allows us to not have to bring in tons of temporary infrastructure. So in this case, what you're looking at here is one half of the concessions and restrooms that will support events up to 5,000 capacity in the amphitheater space. So behind this plastic, we have a series of concession windows which will offer food during our larger events, and they can be closed when there's not an event, either all of them or some of them. And there's just a beautiful steel door that will be there, and this will just be a plaza that the public can access. Similarly, we have restrooms built into this building as well that can serve up to 5,000 people during our larger events, or also be open partially if needed for other just general park use. And so we have a similar set of bathrooms and concessions over here on the other side of the amphitheater building. And what you can notice here, and you'll see more as we move through the photos, is this is built into the hillside. So in this case, it has a green roof on top of it. And in this example, it has an occupiable plaza. So you'll be able to walk up here or go up on an elevator and stand and look out over the park. We can do different events and gatherings up here. And then this connects over to Trinity Street. So the building is really buried into the hillside with occupiable space and green roofs. Here's a look kind of behind the scenes into that concession space. Over here on the right will be the concession carts and counters that will serve food during an event. And then doors, steel doors, will close all this off when there's not an event. And then we've got coolers and ice machines and all the supporting infrastructure back here for any type of event. But really the way that this will work is, we will set up an event during the day, have that an event in the evening, let's say, open all these doors and open the resources to the event goers. And then that night, everything will be loaded out, packed away, the doors will be closed, and we'll be able to open a park back for general park use the next day in this space. So really being able to flip over this section of the park from one use to another as quickly as possible without a lot of those impacts. So moving into the park a little bit more, into the area that we call the lower lawn, it's part of the Great Lawn, you get a straight shot look at the amphitheater here. You know, it's really cool. We've got the Capitol in the background, sort of helping to set that stage, and then we have the steel canopy over top of the stage, as well as these plaza spaces that I was mentioning. It's almost like a cloud-like structure that sort of mimics the tree canopy. And you know, you also have down here the lower lawn where we have some soils going in here to support our, you know, the planting of sod. During general park use, you know, you'll be able to throw a frisbee, walk your dog, just hang out on a blanket down here. And if we have a special event, this area is designed to have, you know, mobile temporary chairs set up. So this could be seated for different types of events. You know, up to around 3,000 chairs could fit in this area in rows, allowing us to do ticketed seated events or unticketed seated events, partial seated, partial lawn, a lot of flexibility and options there. And, you know, that's really enabled through the way this soils and grasses are designed. You know, we went to great lengths to redesign the soil profile and put a stabilizing system underneath that soil. So the soil is really quick draining, and that soil drains into a cistern, which is over here at the front of the stage. And so when the water drains through the grass, whether we're watering it or it's a rainstorm, it drains quickly so we don't get a lot of puddles and ruts and, you know, mud spots, and then it drains into a cistern. And then that water is treated on site through a series of rain gardens and put back into Waller Creek. So, you know we have to keep the grass healthy so that everyone can use it all the time, but also focusing on those sustainability aspects of cleaning and reusing water where we can. So here's another look at that lower lawn. You can see the soils going in. You can see the stage. This area during an event, like a concert, let's say, will be fully seated. Lots of seats in here, and folks enjoying a concert from those seats. And then we can break those down. It'll be a lawn, just like you see here in the background, and that lawn's going in any day now. Here's a view kind of from the stage, looking out over the lawn. So during normal park use, the stage will be occupiable by anyone, and I'll show you kind of how that works. But during a show, this would be a view where there'd be lots of seats set up here, people enjoying the show, and then back here would be kind of a general admission lawn seating area. This shot shows how this can be used during a non-show mode, and it's pretty cool. The construction crew have already kind of picked up on that intended purpose, you know, without it even being set up for them, and moved picnic tables up here. So the idea is this is an accessible space when there's not a show, where we can have flexible seating. We have the shade provided by that canopy overhead, and the rain protection. You can see it here, and I'll show you a better photo, but there is a skylight system which provides total rain protection over the stage as well. It allows light to come through. So, you know, we'll have a show at night. There'll be an awesome, you know, music performer up here putting on an incredible show. And then the next day we'll flip it around, and this will be a space where someone can sit down and enjoy their lunch as they walk over from the stage. Another view of the steel canopy. There's approximately 5 miles of white steel I-beam up here in this roof, about 6-inch I-beams with some larger trusses and columns. And you can see the complexity. This supports all of the rigging that puts on shows and events. So we'll have speakers and lights and television screens, television monitors, and curtains and everything else to support a show can mount up here to this steel system. It also supports the lights and the power and the sprinklers and everything else we need, as well as you can see here, you know, through the steel, that skylight system, which provides rain protection. Here's just kind of a beauty shot of that, and you can see how it kind of disappears at the edges to kind of keep that tree canopy cloud-like feel as it gets narrower and the columns get, or the I-beams get further spread apart at the edge. And then I like this shot. This is from a while ago, sort of just as the rain was rolling in, as you can tell. But it shows the stack of all these steel I-beams as it was being built. So at the widest part, there's over a dozen layers of this steel, which provides that shade and then the structure to support all that heavy equipment, which will be mounted off of it during certain events. And this structure and all the supporting structures were designed by Thomas Pfeiffer and Partners, our lead architect. So here's a view from the back of the lawn, sort of just walking back to the newly planted great lawn, and you can see down to that stage. And so on the other side of this little planted hill here will be where the GA seating is. So this is where you'll spread out your blanket and enjoy the show from the back of the lawn. And it gently slopes up, so there'll be sight lines. That'll also, help with the mitigating sound as well. And, one of the kind of key elements of the design of this project is we really wanted to plant a ton of trees, but we also wanted to have great day one shade. And so one of the ways that we did that, and you can see it here at the back of the lawn, this is one of 8 transplanted trees on site. So this allowed us to have some great mature live oaks on site. Day one, we opened the park, in addition to the over 500 smaller trees that were planted on site. So creating kind of that generational canopy of shade. So day one, we've got these great transplants that we worked with a lot of great partners around us to transplant to the site. And then as time goes on and, we may lose some trees and trees continue to grow, we'll have the great shade of those trees slowly growing over the decades. So this is kind of what the image, the rendering of the stage looked like. And this is kind of where we are now. So, we got to put in the grasses and we got to plant the vines and finish pouring the sidewalks. But, we're very close to finishing the Moody Amphitheater building. So going forward, we're going to jump into the backstage area, kind of the behind the scenes support infrastructure that allows all of these activities to happen, and in a way that, works well with this as a permanent year-round park space. So you can see from this image, the green on top of a lot of the building. So that's a beautiful green roof that just looks like a park landscape. You can also see this sort of checkered grid area. This is all a plaza on top of the rest of the building with green roof areas. And so if we jump forward, we're standing here on one of those green roof areas and looking down into the park. So you can see the stage here. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier was, you'll be able to hang out here during the day when there's not a show, and it's ADA accessible. So we've got this great ramp coming up and these stairs that folks can sit on and enjoy some shade and rain protection and look out over the park. And then all of this will be planted grass. You can also see across to the plaza areas here where these guys are hanging out. And there's more plaza space over here. So great views into the park and shaded, protected areas to hang out at the plaza level. So you go underneath that plaza level. So up above us, up above the ceiling here, there's folks walking in and out of the park, enjoying the shade of the canopy. And down under here is where a lot of the business is happening to support the types of events that could happen. I like this photo because this is, early on before we finish the space out. You can see how those unique columns land through the building and down into the foundation. So in order to achieve that beautiful cloud-like atmosphere of the building, we had to work around all these uniquely placed columns underneath here, as well as the curved wall. So roughly the same location, photo from more recently. You can see how we filled it out with offices and all the utilities in order to support that. So back here we've got 6 dressing rooms, green room, office space for the folks who are on tour. We've got the electrical and IT infrastructure rooms to support that, as well as the concessions and bathrooms. So really we want this to have, world-class back of house infrastructure to support great touring bands, dance, theater, other types of groups, and be able to bury that under the hillside and utilize everything as a park space. So this is near the loading dock area. A lot of our, electrical and IT infrastructure loading in. And then as you zoom out overhead, all of that is underneath here. And this is that plaza space that views out into the park. And you enter off Trinity Street. I wanted to highlight this as well to show we've got these 3 loading docks here, which can be closed off through a gate here. And so that allows us to load in and load out without having all those large trucks in the park impeding any other uses. So really trying to keep all of that hidden into the building. So moving a little bit further to the south, we're going to take a stop at the Meredith Plaza Family Pavilion and the Deal Booth Promenade. So right next to the canopy, and this is that plaza level I was just speaking of, and our dressing rooms are underneath here, underneath the soil and underneath the plaza. There's going to be a walkway connection which leads you onto the Meredith Plaza. which is this beautiful oval-shaped deck underneath probably the two best trees on site. These two giant live oaks will provide shade, protection, and a great seating area for folks who want to sit down and maybe do some work or enjoy lunch in the park. And here's another view, kind of where you would walk in, where these folks are walking in between the trees. And all under here will be mobile seating. It'll be supportive of food trucks that we have over here and in this area of the park next to the family pavilion. I like this photo because it really, really shows the talent and hard work of our design and construction team. When you have two massive, old, and really critical oak trees like this, you can't just build anything around them. You have to build very carefully, plan, design very carefully, and then you have to adapt to the conditions you find in the field. And this shows the supporting structure underneath the deck. And you can see just how complex it is to place these individual foundations in areas that will not negatively impact the roots of the trees. And that's why you get all these, kind of crazy looking cross beam support systems that go in different patterns and shapes. And then you have to build that deck on top of it, and you never see this. But it really shows the great talent that everyone brought to figuring this out and being able to allow people to occupy this great space under these trees without impacting them negatively in any way. Moving a little further south, we get to the family pavilion. So, this is a great moment of, collaboration with our stakeholders. We have this beautiful building here that's now nearing completion, designed by the great local architecture firm, Michael Shue Office of Architecture. And originally, we started out with a concept of building a park cafe here. So, something with indoor and outdoor seating, more traditional food service, and a larger building. We had a series of public meetings and comment periods about this, and what we heard overwhelmingly was, that's probably not the best fit for the needs of the community. We heard a lot of feedback about price point maybe being too high, not having enough options to work with different local vendors and change things up, and a real preference for something more like food trucks. So we took that feedback, and then we also had feedback about what our needs were for restroom use, program support, storage, and that's what led us to this great building you see here. So this building has 3 unisex restrooms over here, a large storage room to support our programs and events, and a trash room to enclose any trash from 2 adjacent food trucks. So those food trucks will be semi-permanent, but allows us more flexibility to work with different vendors and offer different price points and styles of food. And that was a great change where we were going in one direction, and the feedback really helped us move to something a lot better. One of the really cool features of this building that I wanted to highlight was, through our feedback process and conversations with other great parks around the country, one of the things we heard a lot of was that, having access to bathrooms is obviously really critical for families and kids, but many times the bathroom trip itself is as much about, or more frequently about, washing hands than using the bathroom. And there can be long lines waiting on hand washing, waiting on the bathrooms, and really all that's needed is hand washing. And obviously that becomes even more important now with more frequent hand washing required to stay safe. So Michael Shue's office designed this really unique concrete pedestal sink, which is in kind of the vestibule sort of lobby area of the bathroom and not within the individual stalls. So people can come up and wash their hands more frequently from both sides without having to wait on a bathroom to open. And it creates this really cool architectural feature in the building as well. So here's just a little bit closer up look of that cool cast in place concrete sink. And that back wall will have some plantings on it and will really flow into the landscape. So here's a rendering of what that ultimately will look like. Again, the building is nestled into the hillside and feels like it's sort of emerging from the hillside with plantings all around it. And then we have those 2 food trucks offering different food options and the ability to kind of change things up over time. Moving a little bit further to the south, we reach the Deal Booth Promenade. And so that is that elevated concrete walkway you see in the background that kind of meanders or snakes its way through the park. Here's a view from overhead as they're installing the railings. This is one of the really cool features of the park itself, just sort of geographically, is that the park has an elevation change of a little more than 50 feet from the southwest corner over to the southeast corner. So moving from, west to east, the park changes dramatically. Project-wide and program-wide, we have a goal of universal accessibility. So really that kind of goes beyond your traditional ADA accessibility and looks not only to have access for folks of all mobilities to everywhere, but the same access. So what we wanted to do is avoid elevators, lifts, and switchback ramps wherever possible, and have single pathways that were accessible to everyone. So with that in mind, Michael Van Valkenburg and Associates came up with this elegant curving elevated walkway or promenade, which navigates that major grade change as it curves through the tree canopy and connects to the hillside to not only navigate the grade, but create these beautiful views out into the park and down into the spaces below. So from underneath, you have these thin columns that blend into the landscape, and this curved, very thin profile concrete sort of structure supporting the walkway. Here's another view from underneath. You can see how it kind of has almost like a boat shape as it curves, and how those columns are not regularly placed. They're placed carefully so that they disappear into the landscape, and you get the appearance that this walkway is floating through the tree canopy in the landscape. It also creates these cool moments where you're underneath a walkway and someone's above you. And so you might be walking through a dense landscape below and look up and someone's looking down into that landscape. And here's an example of just such an instance. This is a kind of in progress construction photo from a while ago, but it just shows the complexity of getting something like this done and really how collectively talented the design and construction team was to work this out. This is a post-tensioned concrete structure that's curved and has a really thin profile. So this shows the post-tensioning and the rebar attached to the formwork, a very unique formwork system with foam, individual foam pieces to achieve that curve and smooth finish that was put in place in order to achieve the look that y'all just saw. So a lot of really creative minds went into coming up with this really unique structure we're going to have in the park. Moving just a little bit to the west, we're going to take a stop at the Kitty King Powell lawn. And this is really the primary formal play area of the park. Our approach to play, that we've worked on with the Parks Department and our designers at Michael Van Valkenburg and Associates and our local team at DWG Landscape Architecture is really focused on nature-based play. So with that in mind, the whole park is an area for play of all ages. But it's important to have some, real symbols that there is the ability to play here. And so the Kitty King Powell lawn is the primary example of that. So using natural materials and, approaches that really blend with the landscape, there's some formal play elements that are kind of those signposts of it's okay to play here that connect to some of the more playful landscape areas. So in this case, we have kind of three primary play elements. We have a slide with sort of a stone scramble climb up over here. We have this large log climber that we're calling the log jam. And then we have mega grass, which is huge grass that is really focused on younger play, toddler play. So here's a progress photo from just the other day. You can see the mega grass being installed. You can also see the foundations for that log climber being put in right here. So all the logs will come off on top of this. And then we have shaded seating areas. So, kids can take a break or parents can watch the kids play from a safe distance with good views down into the play area. We also have this great stone slide over here around this heritage tree. And here's a close-up. And this slide, we spent a lot of time looking at the appropriate slide type to put in place. And, metal slides are obviously way too hot for this climate. And plastic slides can often, stand out and feel unnatural and really distracting from the nature play experience. So this is a custom stone slide that we actually had made from a great team of fabricators in Germany. And then it was brought over here piece by piece and reassembled. And you can see it there in its final home in the play area. And so you can see these guys right now just enjoying a nice break. And in the future, that'll be folks watching their kids play in this climber area. I also like this photo because you can see the Deal Booth Promenade as it kind of snakes its way around and ultimately lands over here as well. So you can see that sort of grade change and those great views down into the park that you'll get from the promenade. Moving to the southwest corner, we have the Hill Country Garden. So, you know, a lot of this park, as I mentioned, has unique topography and grade changes. This area that we call the Hill Country Garden has that. It's one of the highest points in the park, but it also has this great canopy of existing heritage oaks. And so the design team, Michael Van Valkenburg and Associates and DWG, really wanted to focus and working in close collaboration with the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center on creating this very hill country landscape in the park. So it's an example of what you might see in the hill country, but pumped way up into a garden space. And in that space, we have lots of plantings, but we also have paths and areas of exploration that work collaboratively with the play features we just saw. So here's a view from just a few days ago as the plants continue to go in. A real focus on native plantings, and you can see those in the foreground. One of the other cool features that I think is kind of emblematic of the design approach that was brought to this project is the stone walkways you see kind of in the foreground there. We call this stone scramble. They're these little informal paths which sort of meander their way through the gardens and the trees and then connect back to the more formal pathways. This was an idea that the design team came up with after looking at a waste product that you see in the local quarries here. So these stones here are basically the castaways from stone that's used to clad residential buildings. So just piles and piles and piles of the stone product going to waste. So we're able to repurpose that stone instead of it just sitting there at quarries and use it to create these informal pathways that will allow people to explore the garden. But you can also imagine children playing on these, sort of coming off the playscape and running through here and playing tag or hide and seek or just exploring the garden. You can also see here the plantings going in. So these will, you know, move together and grow much bigger over time. And then you see these bollards, which will provide this really low level of light and create this pretty magical experience in the evenings, lighting up these beautiful garden spaces. Just another photo of that stone scramble. And you can get a good view of those heritage live oaks that are in place around there. Yeah. So also within this area around the gardens and navigating those grade changes are a lot of sort of curved walkways and outlooks, which navigate the hillside, but also provide great viewpoints and seating areas. One other thing I'll point out in this location is down here on your left is one of those rain gardens, which is filtering the water collected by the cistern. So the water from the cistern moves underneath the park all the way over here to the other side of the park and is treated by 2 rain gardens before it enters back into Waller Creek as clean water. Here's a look at one of those kind of viewpoints or sort of rocky outcroppings in the park, providing a great view towards downtown and of the creek and the rest of the park. Also, we've created these seating areas kind of in the elbows of these trails. We have a permeable trail surface material, which is being protected and covered by that black fabric right there, which allows water to quickly drain into the soil and, you know, keep those gardens healthy. But in kind of these elbows underneath a lot of those great existing live oaks, there are these custom cast-in-place benches that you can see there where the water cooler is. And those benches will have a little wooden top around them for added comfort. But those are great areas to just sort of sit in the shade and enjoy the garden. And here's another view of some of those benches. There's one here as well, nestled into the hillside in between the trees. And here's just a look at what the vision of that space was when we were designing, so you can see kind of where we are now as those plants come in. So moving on to the Leberman Plaza, one of our final stops. This space right here, you can see this circular gathering space. One of the design sort of ideas we wanted to incorporate was, obviously we have the Moody Amphitheater space, which could accommodate all types of events and programs and activities, but it's pretty large. And so we wanted to have a space within the park that allowed for smaller events or even informal events. So this space is about 80 feet by 80 feet. It has the stone seating that you can see here. And I'll zoom in to the other side. You can see it here. And then it has power and water and everything to support smaller events like smaller music performances or things that require a PA system or lights. But it also will be a great home for busking or other informal types of activities like that or gatherings. So it creates sort of a smaller space nestled around this walkway. And you can just imagine people will be able to look down and be like, oh, that's really cool. What's going on down there? And work their way down around and enter into this plaza. Also, when there's not an event going on there, we just have this great, mostly shaded seating where folks can come and enjoy their lunch or just hang out. And here's a view of walking underneath the Deal Booth Promenade and into that space. So the promenade kind of works its way fully around the space, and you can look down into it, and then you come in under here and you can walk in and see what's going on in person. So our last stop on the tour before we take questions from everyone, or answer questions, is I'm going to show you all some aerial views from just the other day. So we have this really cool ability with our construction manager who takes frequent drone photography of the site. So this is just from the other day. So we've got really up-to-date imagery that I can share with y'all. So this is hovering over the Brackenridge Garage, former hospital site, and looking down into the park. So you can see that grass that's in, and we walked over here and we looked at these transplanted trees. You can also see the entrance that we walked in on 14th Street here and into the park, and then this area of the lower lawn and the stage where we were hanging out in some previous images. This one's also cool because it shows you the plaza space on top of the building here, and then this is all going to be planted green. This will be a green roof, so the hill will just sort of spill up over there in these locations. Moving over here, you can again see that large great lawn that's planted, Capitol in the background, obviously. And then here, this will be cool, and I'll show another one too. You can see how this project has to work seamlessly around the really critical infrastructure of the Waller Creek Flood Control Tunnel. So this is the primary facility for operating the tunnel, removing debris from Waller Creek and helping push the floodwaters down underneath Waller Creek and out to the lake, which really enables us to build this project. So, this is just one example of the many great moments of collaboration between the city and the Conservancy and our design team on this. But here you can see the tunnel infrastructure, which is this wall, which helps, keep this pond water moving safely. And when they built that, they built sleeves into it, which allowed us to build this elevated lawn on top of it, recapturing, nearly a half acre of parkland in this great lawn space. Through that collaboration. So just one of many examples of that great collaboration and shared space. This is the southeast corner of the park, so 12th Street and Red River. And here this work is, we're just moving along building a wetland here. But one of the cool things in this location is obviously you can see that tunnel infrastructure and how we're working together and sharing space with a crane over here. You can also see another one of the significant transplanted heritage oaks on site. So this one here was through a great partnership with Graystar Development, who's working on redeveloping the Austin Symphony Orchestra offices site across the street here. So a lot of collaborations and partnerships really go into executing the vision you see in these images. Working our way around the site, an aerial view down into the Hill Country Garden that we just visited. You can see those sort of meandering pathways, little benches in the elbows, the overlooks and outcroppings that with views down to the creek, and then the Deal Booth Promenade and Leverman Plaza right here. You also get a great view of that live oak canopy that already exists on site. Moving around, to the Trinity Street side, again, the Deal Booth Promenade navigating that grade change and those pathways, see the live oaks, and then we're starting to see the playground over here in the Kitty King Powell lawn. We have the Meredith Plaza here in the foreground, and you can see the unique oval-shaped deck connecting to the, family pavilion designed by Michael Shu's office. And then the food trucks will slot in right here and right here. And the adjacency of the playground you can really see here as well. So you can grab some food and then walk over here and sit and keep an eye on the kids the whole time. I like this image because it really shows you the, many layers of the canopy, as well as that covered area of skylights. So the kind of bluish looking area here shows that area that's covered with rain protection over top of the stage. And the shadow lines you can really see here. So folks will enter in here from the sidewalk on Tranny Street into this plaza, either come down over here and into the park or go through the Meredith Plaza and into the park. Finally, just an image looking down the creek. So we have Waller Creek right here moving through the park and going into the flood control tunnel. And we're rebuilding this section of Waller Creek from 14th to 15th Street in order to better withstand large flood events and be more supportive of the program that's going into the park. So you can see that work going in here as well, just beginning, putting the hard sort of stone surfaces in place, and the plantings will come in later. And then finally, just the last image looking out over the whole park, kind of at sunset, and you can see a lot of those features all at once and how it all comes together. Yeah, and with that, that's kind of the end of our aerials, and I know Melissa and I will gladly answer your questions.
Thank you, John. That's a really great overview of our construction progress at Waterloo Park. It's really exciting for us to be able to keep our community engaged and show you all what's happening behind the construction fence. So we really appreciate everyone who's tuned in and all the questions that we've been receiving. The number one question that we get is when we anticipate the park opening. So I've seen a couple folks ask that in our Q&A in the chat. As you all know, we have been very careful during COVID with safety protocols and making sure that we are continuing construction in the safest way possible. We are anticipating to open in spring of next year. So please stay tuned for more updates on that, but that's our target at this time. We're continuing to assess, obviously, to make sure that we're keeping it safe as we have so far. We also have a question related to opening and if we will be waiting for all 3 phases to be done before opening. So just to answer that question also, we will be opening in a phased approach. As John mentioned, Waterloo Park is our first phase of construction. And so that's the section that's going to open in spring of 2021. And then we'll continue with our future phases for the Waterloo Greenway project, and we'll continue opening those in sequence. So thank you for asking that question. And John, we have a question about the Meredith tree deck and how we will be watering those trees with that deck covering that's over the root system. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have irrigation systems integrated under the deck in order to water and keep those trees healthy. We also will be, with all the trees, but especially our bigger, older trees, having a regular arborist checkups to make sure everything's going smoothly and the trees are healthy and thriving. But they will be irrigated and regularly checked in on, because those are really kind of some of the icons of the park, and we want them to be around for a very long time.
Yeah, thank you. And that is super important to us. And as John mentioned, our project is in collaboration with the City of Austin and our Parks and Recreation departments and Watershed Protection Department. And they work with us hand in hand along the way. And they also pay special attention to our tree care. So thank you for answering that question and for being engaged with the project for the folks that are asking questions about our trees. So we have a question about, so we have a comment and a question. So someone mentioned that we will have so many people coming to check out the park from all over Central Texas, and they're asking where all these folks are going to park. So John, can you tell us a little bit about our access options for getting to Waterloo Park?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you probably noticed, we're not turning any parkland into parking. But what we are doing is working with our adjacent neighbors who have lots of parking on partnerships to access that parking. So the biggest one will be obviously working with the state of Texas on how we can access that parking when they don't need it in order to support parking for the park. So that would be a combination of regular park use, but especially access for larger special events, which would require much more parking. The other piece obviously is, non-automotive options to get to the park, which, will be more local than regional, but working with our friends at Cap Metro on expanding options, particularly along Trinity Street with Project Connect, as well as bike and pedestrian access and connecting in with the city's plans to expand infrastructure in this area to support those. So, obviously lots of bike parking and a major connection in the city's bicycle network, and, connecting up with Cap Metro and their future plans for a line along Trinity Street will be supportive of getting folks to and from the park as well.
Absolutely. And then we have two additional questions that sort of tag into that. So one person is asking about bike racks and what that looks like in the park. And then someone else has asked about how many miles of trails we'll have in the park also.
Yeah, great question. So within the park, we have bike racks primarily along the borders of the park, along the streets, so Trinity Street and Red River. We have, bike parking to support general park use. We certainly will explore temporary or valet type parking for bikes for larger events. And we've done that with other large events in our past. And, our event partners who we'll be working with also have experience with that. So, when and if that's needed, we have spaces that we've looked at where we could, capitalize on that as well. Sorry, what was the second part of the question, Melissa?
Could you tell us a little bit about the trails in the park and
yeah.
we're adding to that trail network also?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, it's about, in total, all three phases are about 1.5 miles of Waller Creek. But along that 1.5 miles, if you include the park spaces and accessible trails on both sides of the creek, we're adding about 3.5 miles, 3 to 3.5 miles of new ADA accessible trails to this area of downtown. If you look at Waterloo specifically, within Waterloo alone, there's about 1 mile of trails. So if you just walked around kind of a Waterloo circuit, you could get a pretty good workout walking around, enjoying the park as you go.
Yeah, thank you. Related to park amenities, we have a question about seating and permanent benches. And the comment is, it seems like it's mostly green space and walking paths, which is great. But they're wondering about some of those other park amenities. So could you tell us a little bit about our seating and where folks can find some of that throughout the park?
Sure, yeah. So, you may have noticed we don't have like a bench that's throughout the park, but we have lots of seating that's integrated into the landscape. So I'm gonna jump back and just show you all a couple examples. One example that we use in multiple locations are these large limestone blocks, which create kind of a stadium seating effect. So these are all seating areas, and those are sort of nestled into hillsides and shaded areas wherever possible, and often have views kind of down into areas where there might be something cool going on. And you can see that again here. Also, you can kind of see this in this photo as well. We have these cast in place benches here and here and here, and there's a few others over here that will provide seating as well. And those will have a nice comfortable wood topper on them. And then there are areas like, and here's some more views of those benches. Here's a nice close up. So it'll have a nice wood topper and a back on it. Additionally, if I can jump really far forward here for y'all, one of the things that we're going to utilize in multiple locations, most specifically though, in the Meredith Plaza, is flexible seating. So, this entire deck space will have movable chairs, tables, cafe tables and chairs and different sizes in this area that can be moved around and placed on the deck. So that allows a bit more flexibility. It allows for groups of different sizes to gather or spread out. And it also allows us to use this space more flexibly for programs or other things if that's needed. So combination of those cast in place concrete benches, the limestone block seating, as well as temporary flexible seating here and maybe on the amphitheater stage as well.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're really trying to work with the design and incorporate amenities into the landscape as much as we can for that seamless experience. So thank you for that question. We have a few questions related to operations. So I'm gonna take those on sort of in a group. So we have a question about the park and if we would have perimeter fencing and how we'll be monitoring the park in the evenings and when we don't have any programming happening. So to answer that question, we won't have permanent fencing around the park. If you're familiar with Republic Square, for example, in downtown, you can imagine a similar experience at Waterloo Park where you can, you know, enter at different, for us, we'll have different entrance points at Republic Square. You have, you know, quite a bit of area to enter the park, and you can imagine we'll have a similar experience also with some main entry areas. We will also have a team for our operations and maintenance, and are also working with the Downtown Austin Alliance with their ambassador program to expand some of that to also monitor Waterloo Park. And the last question related to operations is how we will promote or prevent urban camping. And that's a really good question. We get that one quite a bit. And so we, as we've talked about, we are working in collaboration with the City of Austin Parks and Rec Department. We will be a City of Austin Park, so we will fall under all of their rules and ordinances, which include no camping in parks, and also having curfew hours for when the park is open for operation and when the park is closed. Our operations team will also be responsible for making sure that folks are being good stewards of the park and following those rules. But then we also want to, you know, work with our local organizations that are working particularly around the work for people experiencing homelessness. And we also want to be a part of the solution and looking at programs where we can collaborate with different organizations. But it is a multifaceted strategy that we're looking to implement in the park. But thank you for asking that question. So shifting gears a little bit, John, we have some questions about the canopy and the amphitheater roof. So someone has asked what our cleaning and bird strategy will be for the canopy structure. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, if we got any bird experts out there, you know, reach out. But no, in all seriousness, you know, we will be trying to prevent birds from, you know, nesting up there, looking at lasers and other technology that helps prevent that. Our cleaning program will be a combination of power washing. So the roof system is designed to be regularly power washed, and there are there's a plan for access for bucket trucks which can reach over there with power washing and spray off the surfaces up top, you know, as well as the individual steel members. Also, we have a very robust marine paint on all of the areas of the canopy, but, you know, periodically, you know, we're talking decades, not months, there will be repainting required in order to keep that nice white finish on the steel. So it'll require some maintenance in order to keep it looking, you know, nice and white and shiny, but there are access points in an operational plan in order to achieve that.
Yeah, absolutely. We also have gotten a couple questions about the rain and weather protection of the canopy. So can you tell us about that again? And someone asked about rainwater collection for the cistern. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that after we go over the canopy structure.
Sure, and you know, this image here really shows the kind of canopy structure rain protection. So in the area you see with this sort of light blue kind of clouded area here, this is a system that's composed of skylight panels, basically. They provide total rain coverage over the stage and a certain area set back from the stage that covers some of the plaza as well as some of the area in front of the stage to provide rain protection for artists on the stage or, you know, other types of performers. Those all slope towards a drain and gutter system, which carries that water away from the stage, so it won't ever hit the stage. The areas that are just the steel I-beams around that, water will go through those like it would through a trellis. And so water will hit areas of the plaza as well as areas of landscape underneath that are designed to, you know, get that extra water. but the stage itself will remain dry. Jumping forward, I'll show, let me see if I can find a good image here. Okay, yeah, that's a good one. So the cistern itself is right under here, kind of underneath where you see this, scissor lift, and it's underground here. And basically the way that works is that this entire lawn is sloped and has a soil system where the water will drain all the way down here to large drains up here, which then go into the cistern. When the cistern reaches a certain capacity, that water then flows from here underground this way, keeps going, and then it moves through rain gardens here and here, and then goes under and makes its way into Waller Creek. So it has a long journey and is, very well treated, and then comes back into the creek. And one of the cool things about the park itself and how that helps recirculate and clean water is the park is irrigated through two sources. One is the reclaimed water, so the purple pipe. In areas where that is possible and safe, we're using the city's reclaimed water. Our backup, when needed, is not potable water. It's actually water from Waller Creek through the tunnel. So as we recirculate that water back into the creek, if needed, we're pulling more backup water from the creek to irrigate, with the purple pipe being our primary source. So really trying to be sustainable with our water use while helping to keep those great trees and plants alive.
Yeah, and thank you for describing that. I think the cistern is such a great feature that we have in the park, and sustainability is one of our top goals as we've been working through our park design and what our goals are as a park. So we have two final questions. So one is about the plan for booking events. So thank you for asking that. We will have a lot of opportunities for having events in the park, but then also have opportunities where the park is, quieter and doesn't have activities happening. So we want to find a balance with a time where you could just, come and lay on the grass, but then where we have a combination of community programs, both in the amphitheater and in the plaza areas that John talked about. So Waterloo Greenway will be working with our own programming team, but then local partners to produce all kinds of events like music and art, different festivals. We want to look at events that have history in the park and see which ones we can bring back. But imagine, theater or ballet or spoken word that you could experience in the park. So please contact us at waterloogreenway.org if you have ideas, or if you work for some type of event, nonprofit, or you have a program that you'd like to suggest to us, and we're more than happy to see what opportunities we have available. And then we also have our partnership with C3 and Live Nation, where we will be using our wonderful amphitheater to produce ticketed concerts. And that's a great way for us to generate revenue that we can then reinvest back into the park for our operations and maintenance. And we look to have all kinds of events in the park for all ages. So thank you for that question. And then our final question, John, is about our restroom facilities. So the question is, if we have single stall bathrooms for people with disabilities who use wheelchairs and may have opposite gender caregiver or parents, and if so, do we have changing tables? And the question is about adult size changing tables. So could you tell us a little bit about our bathroom composition and some of the features that folks can find in those amenities?
Yeah, great question. We have, the three unisex restrooms, which are in the family pavilion. One of those is a larger ADA restroom, which could also, be a family restroom. And we have changing tables. I don't know the answer to the weight capacity question, but I'm happy to look into that. Regarding the changing tables. We also have family restrooms in the amphitheater restroom area as well that could support, family use like you just described.
Thank you, John. So those are all of our questions. If we could jump to our final slide. We just have some closing remarks, but thank you all again for joining us today for our monthly Waterloo Park virtual tour. Like I mentioned, we will be uploading this recording to our website and our YouTube. If you'd like to join us for our next tour, we always have new views. It's always different information that we have, so please join us again. You can find information on our next tour in October at waterloogreenway.org. We do want to thank our program sponsors. Our project and our programs are a collaboration with different organizations in our community that's helping us produce all of this. So I want to give a special thank you to our supporters, BBVA, the PAL Foundation, Susan Bond Foundation, Waterloo Sparkling Water, and the Word Company. And if you are interested or have the capacity to also support Waterloo Greenway, please visit us at waterloogreenway.org/support for more information. And with that, we just wanted to thank you again for being with us and asking some really great questions. And thank you to John for leading us through a really great tour.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.